Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. First, my prayers go out to the people negatively impacted by the events at the recent Dublin weigh-in. I think that's terrible. I hope the police get to the bottom of that quickly. I hope not too many people were hurt. Let's talk about Amir Khan against Saul Alvarez. I'm really shocked at the numbers, which are big for me online, that the Amir Khan Saul Alvarez video got. Let me just add a few more comments on that fight. You know, I was reading through a great site, boxingscene.com, yesterday, and I came across an article quoting Nacho Barristain. Right? He's the Hall of Fame trainer of people like Juan Manuel Marquez, right? His guys have fought other great fighters in boxing. Johnny Gonzalez is also a former student of his. In my opinion, Nacho Barristain is really at that elite Angelo Dundee, Emmanuel Stewart level of trainer in the sport of boxing, right? I will often research fighters simply because Nacho Barristain has mentioned them in interviews with the press. Now, I wasn't aware of this until yesterday. Y'all have heard me say that on my scorecard, Miguel Cotto beat Saul Alvarez, right? I'll concede the people around me thought Alvarez won the fight, right? Obviously, something was going on there. I thought Cotto won the fight. Now, I didn't know until yesterday, in reading this boxingscene.com article, and it's still up, folks, that Nacho Barristain watched the Cotto Canelo fight and he thought Canelo got beaten. Right? What I want the people here to do, and I know many disagree with me, and I understand that I'm a minority voice on this, but what I want the people to do is to revisit that fight. It's very important. Now, whoever you thought won the Cotto-Canelo or Canelo-Cotto bout, right? What I want you to do is to just focus on hand speed, right? Forget scoring the bout. All we're doing here is research to figure out the chance that Canelo, the favorite, has against underdog Amir Khan. What I want you to do is to just focus on hand speed in his match against Cotto. And what I believe you're going to see is you're going to see a hand speed gap. You're going to see that Cotto gets there first, right? You're going to notice that Cotto is able to throw at the same time as Canelo, and his hands just move faster, right? This is 30-something Miguel Cotto. In my opinion, he has faster hand speed than Saul Alvarez. But what I want people to also look at is how Cotto is able to move away from Saul Alvarez, right? When you're fighting a big hitting guy who can chase you across the ring, there's no ability to move away from that guy, right? Think Mike Tyson, right? Let's say Mike hurts me and we're in the middle of the ring, right? I don't have the option of saying, okay, I've been hurt. Let me back away and let me clear my head, right? I don't have that option against the elites. I believe you have that option against Saul Alvarez, and I believe it's on film in the Cotto fight. Now, let me just say, Nacho Barristain, esteemed trainer, actually says that this Khan fight is an opportunity for Saul Alvarez to redeem himself. Now, understand, this is a very different narrative than the public narrative that has Saul Alvarez as a greater than 2-1 favorite in this fight. Right? Many of you believe that this fight is a mismatch. Right? By the way, Barristain talks about Khan's hand speed in the piece. Right? Many of you think this fight's a mismatch. Think it's a bigger man against a smaller man, even though the two guys are roughly the same height. Right? Even though Amir Khan knows how to use his height. Revisit the Paulie Malignaggi fight. So, what I want to do is just talk about Saul Alvarez. I've mentioned that he's a little bit overrated. Right? I think it's an important point of view because it's not the public's point of view. Right? The public believes that he is so dominant, right, that this Amir Khan fight's a mismatch. Well, let me just say this first. I know Amir Khan had success at junior welter, but please research his record. He's also had success at welter. Right? He's jumping up one weight class. The weight limit for 154 pounds, right? Junior middle is 154. Canelo wants to fight at 155. Right? Think about it. Just 1 pound over that. This is really a welterweight. Amir Khan, who's the same height as Canelo. Understand too, as you get older, your body gets a little bit heavier. Right? I believe Khan's more comfortable these days at 147 than he is at 140. Right? Maybe he was 140 when he was a young pup. Folks, he's a grown-ass man now. Right? So he's at 147. Right? He's just moving up one weight class against the guy who doesn't have his hand speed. More importantly, and I think this is really important, Canelo doesn't have Khan's foot speed. To the Khan people, don't have your fighter gain a lot of weight because we want him light on his feet. Right? He can use his legs for defense. He can just back away and circle a slower moving opponent. Now let's talk about Canelo's record, because I believe that this Canelo bubble is almost as big as the stock market bubble. That's now deflating. Let's go back to April the 20th, 2013. Now he fights Austin Trout. I personally believe Trout won that bout. I've encouraged the viewers to look at the CompuBox numbers on the fight and then to reconcile them with the judges' scorecards. Right? Understand that bout's a bit curious because they were announcing the scorecards during the bout. So Saul Alvarez knew he was ahead during the bout. Austin Trout knew he was behind during the bout. I believe that hurt the outcry, because had we not heard who was ahead during the bout, that bout would have been perceived differently. So at the end of the match, when they said, hey, the winner is Saul Alvarez, a lot of people would have said, you gotta be kidding me. But that didn't happen, because they were announcing the scores, right? Again, what I want you to do, though, is to just look at the CompuBox numbers. Let's just say, conservatively, that that's hardly a dominant performance by Saul Alvarez. The next bout is his bout against Floyd Mayweather. Right now, many journalists, Dan Rayfield, ESPN, I believe score the first 6 rounds or something like that for Floyd Mayweather in that fight. In other words, the fight's not close, folks. Right? Saul Alvarez was well behind on that fight early. Think about it. We consider Mayweather to be a slow starter. Right? But yet against Saul Alvarez, he got off to a fast start. So let's just say this. The Floyd Mayweather showing by Canelo really wasn't that convincing. right? In fact, he lost that fight. It's the only fight he's lost in his career. Let's talk about his next opponent, Alfredo Angulo. Now, he gets a spectacular knockout in that fight. He does. But why is the crowd booing at the end of that fight? Right? Think it through. I believe the crowd's booing because they knew the fight was still competitive at the time of the stoppage. Right? Ref jumps in, says Alfredo can't continue. Okay, great. You know, if the crowd saw a fight that's lopsided, where the favored fighter, the highly regarded fighter, right? Pick the big name in the sport, right? Vladimir Klitschko, Andre Ward, Sergey Kovalev. If you went into Davey Golovkin, if you went into a fight involving a highly regarded fighter and he's beating the daylights out of the opponent, and you get to the later rounds, right? And then the ref jumps in and stops the fight, the crowd wouldn't be booing. Right? You'd be looking at that fight and you'd say, you know what? I've seen Golovkin tee off for too long in this match. This ref might be saving a life, right? Saving his opponent's life. You would feel grateful that you had an opportunity to see a world championship fight. Here, the crowd boos. Why is the crowd booing? Because they knew that Alfredo Angulo on an off night still had a chance to beat Canelo, because they watched Canelo dominate some rounds and then have to take breathers during the round. So Angulo would go from getting hit and covering up to suddenly looking and seeing Saul Alvarez over there getting a breather. Then he would go over and start throwing punches. I would encourage you to go back and look at that fight. Now understand, the next fight is Canelo's fight against Erislandy Lara. Now I know many of you believe that Lara won that fight. I know because I read the comments to these videos. Right? I thought Lara won the fight. You know what? That decision's a split decision. Now I've heard from many of you who believe that Canelo won the fight. Okay, right? That's the pattern, by the way, with Canelo fights. There's the group that feels he lost. There's the group that feels he won. Everyone's arguing about it. Right? Let's just say this guy isn't Mike Tyson. Right? He's not mowing down opponents. While his style is like Vladimir Klitschko's, he's not Vladimir Klitschko. Right? I could call Klitschko robotic and stuff like that. The bottom line is, even Kubrat Pulev's family knows he lost that fight. Right? You're watching these Klitschko fights. Guys are getting knocked out. Guys are getting dominated. You know, even guys who do well against him. I thought Eddie Chambers had moments. End up getting stopped. Right? Marius Wack goes toe-to-toe with him. At the end of the fight, Klitschko clearly has the upper hand. With Canelo, even though he's the same style of fighter, robotic, left hook, jab, straight right hand, right? His fights are razor close. That Erislandy Lara fight that history seems to have forgotten was razor close, folks. Right? The judges had it a split decision. So let's do the math here. That's 4 fights in a row where opponents against Canelo had moments. Right? The CompuBox on Austin Trout. The loss to Floyd Mayweather. Right? We can even skip over the Angulo fight, because I know a lot of people are going to say that was a stoppage. Right? Canelo was ahead on my scorecard in that fight. Right? But let's just say Angulo's still in it. Then you have the Erislandy Lara fight. The fight after that is James Kirkland. Right? You might recall that Kirkland was in disarray in life before that fight. Right? Ann Wolfe and he had a falling out. Kirkland supposedly had to lose a lot of weight. Okay, great. Kirkland was tailor-made. for Canelo, right? Don't confuse Kirkland's hand speed with Amir Khan's, right? Please don't, right? Kirkland came to Canelo. I'll agree. If Amir Khan decides he's going to stay in the pocket and just trade shots with Canelo, even I'll take Canelo. I don't think that's going to be the style of fight here. I don't think you can look at the Kirkland fight with little lateral movement, with little back foot action, and think that that's the way this Khan fight's going to go. Then you get to the Miguel Cotto fight that Nacho Barristain believes Saul Alvarez lost. So let's add up these last 6 fights, right? The Austin Trout fight, the Floyd Mayweather fight. Can we agree that since Sergey Kovalev has hit the public consciousness, we haven't seen him in matches as competitive as those 2 matches? Let's give Canelo the Alfredo Angulo KO win, right? He wins most of the rounds. He stops Angulo, right? We'll forget that the crowd jeered when the stoppage happened. He stops Angulo. Okay, fair enough. Then you get to the Erislandy Lara fight. Folks, that's 3, we'll call it close calls in 4 fights, right? Actually 2 close calls and 1 loss for Canelo in 4 fights, right? Trout, Mayweather, Lara. We'll give Canelo a dominant performance. We'll give him an A against James Kirkland. Okay? Then you get to the Cotto fight. Now all I'm saying is this, and I've seen it before, right? Did Ali really beat Ernie Shavers? Did Ali beat Jimmy Young? Right? Certain guys are bigger than the sport, and if it gets to the scorecards, judges seem to love them, right? Ali had this kind of power over judges, right? Canelo, if it's close, he's been getting a lot of calls, right? In fact, the Cotto fight's even more curious, because you're watching the fight. I thought Cotto was winning. It was as if nobody else in the arena did, right? You know, the people announcing the fight, they're telling you, oh yes, looks like Canelo. Canelo's smiling before the judges' scorecards are announced. Now, let me say this. In Cotto's corner was Freddie Roach, right? I understand that trainers support their fighters, right? Loyalty matters, right? Absolutely. But I will also say this. Freddie Roach is the same guy who pulled the plug on Jean Pascal against Sergey Kovalev, right? Look at Roach's post-fight comments there. He doesn't say, my guy was winning the fight. He doesn't say, there's a part of that fight that his guy's dominating. Right? That's not who he is. Right? So Freddie Roach comes out and says, hey, I thought my guy won the fight. Right? Forget what Freddie says after the fight. Listen to Freddie during the fight. Right? Freddie and Miguel Cotto thought he was winning the fight. Now, I would call Canelo's performance against Cotto to be, let's just say, competitive. Not dominant. Competitive. So what I want people to do is, of Canelo's last 6 fights, Trout, Mayweather, Angulo, Lara, Kirkland, Cotto, right? We'll give Canelo 2 dominant performances, Angulo and Kirkland. Now keep in mind, I'm being generous with the Angulo dominant rating, because as I said, Canelo looks tired at times in that fight. He's up against the ropes against Angulo at times in that fight, right? Angulo isn't his usual crisp self. If he was, that fight would have been much more interesting. but we'll give him 2 dominant fights out of his last 6. So to YouTube Nation, just going to throw it down here. We have a fresh comment section for this video. You tell me, the Trout fight, the Mayweather fight, the Lara fight, the Cotto fight, is Canelo dominant in any of those 4 fights? And understand, this is more than half of his last 6 fights. Right? Is he dominant in any of those matches? Right? Now, if he's not, then what I'd like to know is, why is there such a belief that Amir Khan is way in over his head? Right? I mean, can we agree that Khan is almost the same height, if not the same height, perhaps even taller than Saul Alvarez? I know on boxrec.com, great site, they have Saul Alvarez half an inch taller. I would question that. Right? I would advise people to look at the weigh-in when he's there with Floyd Mayweather. Right? I would say Canelo is probably maybe 5'7.5", 5'8". Right? As I always say, when you have a chance, to pick between official records and your own eyes, go with your own eyes. Right? Let's just say that Canelo and Amir Khan are close in height. Right? Canelo wants to fight this fight at 155. You have to ask yourself why. He's the middleweight champion, folks. That gives him up to 160. Right? He's not going to show up below 160 on fight night. Right? He's probably going to show up weighing about what? 168, 170 on fight night? So why would he sign off on a catch weight? And you know what I think about catch weights. Why would he sign off on a catch weight of 155 pounds for this match? Right? Well, let me just say, if Khan focuses on his hand speed, his volume, and movement, he shouldn't be in the pocket long enough for Canelo to hurt him. Right? Canelo is going to have to wait until Khan gets tired before he catches up with Khan. And I'm just here to tell you, Khan's an offensive juggernaut. He can sit down on punches. Right? Understand, this isn't as simple as, some guy with a bigger punch looking at his watch for 5 or 6 rounds going, he's not tired yet. He's not tired. Okay, now he's tired. What is this, round 7? Let me just step in. Let me finish the show. No, Canelo's going to be getting hit with shots. Right? If he tries to get inside, his face is going to get marked up. Right? A guy with a good jab can bust up your eye. Right? He can create cuts. Right? So Saul Alvarez is going to have to be defending himself from the speed, isn't he? Right? You can't fight Amir Khan and say, okay, I'm just going to, ignore his, hand speed and his jab and stuff like that. You get beaten up. So understand, he's going to have to be covering up. Amir Khan should get off to a fast start in this fight. How many of you had Danny Garcia winning the first or second rounds against Amir Khan? How many of you had Marcus Maidana winning early rounds against Amir Khan? Khan's going to get up 3-1, 4-0. And he's going to be squarely looking at the middleweight title. Right? Then Canelo, who isn't a guy who moves with you, like, let's say, Mike Tyson or something. He's not that guy. Right? He's not the guy. We saw the Pascal Kovalev fight. right? I thought maybe there was a chance Pascal could shoot a jab, use lateral movement and stuff like that. You know what? Kovalev was on him, wasn't he? Right? Kovalev didn't give him room to breathe. Kovalev moves with you, doesn't he? Right? You don't have that opportunity to say, man, this guy's hitting hard. Let me just take a step back and breathe. No. You take a step back, guess what? He takes a step forward. Folks, that's not this guy. That's not Saul Alvarez. So let me say, Mayweather, off to a fast start against him. Right? The Mayweather fight's really over early. By the time we get to round 4 and you're thinking Mayweather's won the first 3 rounds, you understood. For Saul Alvarez to win this fight, he was going to have to do something dramatic. Right? Why do people think that Amir Khan can't get off to a similar start? Right? Didn't Canelo look bad early against Alfonso Gomez? Right? Canelo's a guy who, doesn't jump out the gate on you. Now, the optical illusion is caused by Angulo and Kirkland, right? They're walking toward the hurricane, right? Amir Khan just has to stay away from the hurricane. Pop a jab, be active from distance, use length, use hand speed, right? Take the first few rounds. Understand, Khan fights longer, right? From greater distance than Miguel Cotto, right? Cotto wants to get up on you, get underneath you, throw that left hook to your rib cage, take you out, turn it up top. That's Cotto, right? There have been Amir Khan fights where he's been outside, where he's blistering you with shots. Now, I know he didn't look good against Chris Algieri. Okay, great. Who moves better to you? Algieri or Saul Alvarez? Right? Quite frankly, I think Chris Algieri would have a good shot on Saul Alvarez. So, you have a guy here who is loved by fans. He is one of the most popular people in the sport. Right? But looking at his record here, right? Saul Alvarez, I'll just put it to you this way. Austin Trout goes the distance. Floyd Mayweather goes the distance. Erislandy Lara goes the distance. Miguel Cotto goes the distance. Right? I would say all of the fighters he has fought in his last 6 fights who have back foot gains, right? So that excludes Angulo and Kirkland, have gone the distance with him. Why is the public so certain that Amir Khan can't move around the ring, stay outside, and force the issue? Why is Khan's mobility and quickness being overlooked here? Let me tell you, in boxing history, you've had smaller men beat bigger men. Right? Billy Conn was dominating Joe Louis. Gets caught late. Right? Ray Robinson used to routinely fight guys who were bigger than him. Right? We look at it as, a fighter taking a risk. Well, also, just looking at the Conn-Lewis films, right? Conn accurately understood that Lewis couldn't move that well. That Conn's mobility gave him an advantage. Right? If Amir Khan just keeps his focus, doesn't try to fight Canelo's fight, doesn't decide in the later rounds, I'm going to take this guy out like Billy Conn tried to do against Joe Louis, I think he wins this fight. Right? I want people to examine the records closely. Right? Is it possible that Saul Alvarez hasn't been dominating guys to the degree we think? right? Anyone with a CompuBox sheet, like Khan has, like Alvarez has against Austin Trout, should feel fortunate to win that fight. Right? The Cotto fight, I'm just telling you, please watch that fight without the volume. Right? Just ask yourself if you could see a dynamic where Cotto wins that fight. Right? So, Khan's a live underdog. I believe the play here is to take the underdog. Hey, the casino's going to give me better than even money odds. Sounds good to me. Take the underdog. Take the odds. But hedge the play with Canelo by KO simply because, as Breeders' Prescott people know, right, as Danny Garcia people know, Amir Khan doesn't have the best chin. Let me say this too. If Khan has been dehydrating himself to make weight, and let's remember, that Breeders' Prescott fight was at 140, right? It's possible that the ability to have, let's say, 1 or 2 extra pounds, right, to move up in a weight class might actually give him a better chin, right? You'd be surprised at the relationship between starving yourself and getting knocked out. So this is a competitive fight. I know I've been online here, everyone's saying this is an outrage and all this other stuff. Read the comments of Nacho Barristain. This is a chance for Canelo to redeem himself. Folks, I don't care what the wins and losses are. He needs to redeem himself. Right? That Erislandy-Lara fight had a lot of people sweating before they heard the score totals. Ask yourself, right? Trout thought he won the fight. Lara thought he won the fight. Cotto thought he won the fight. Right? These guys all thought they were in the fight to win the fight. You don't see that with Kovalev opponents. Right? John Pascal, after that last fight, didn't say, hey, I thought I was winning the fight. No, 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 no. You know what I'm saying. You don't have that with Vladimir Klitschko opponents, other than Tyson Fury, who beat him. Right? The guys before Fury, they weren't lining up. Marius Walk wasn't saying, hey, I thought I won the fight. Right? David Haye didn't say, hey, I thought I won the fight. Guys are saying that against Saul Alvarez. World-class trainers are saying, hey, on my scorecard, Canelo lost the fight. Figure out why. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Let me hear your views here in the comment section to this video. Here's my challenge to you two. The Austin Trout fight, the Mayweather fight, the Lara fight, and the Cotto fight. 4 of Canelo's last 6 fights. Tell us which fight he was dominant in. Let me hear from you. Thanks for stopping by.